Natalie Miller, a retired librarian, widow, and lover of quiet mornings and desert sunsets. For months, she thought the skinny black tom she named Soot, haunting her backyard, was just another feral shadow. Until one blistering morning, she saw him curled around something in the dust, holding it like treasure. It wasn't a house kitten. It wasn't even tame. Pressed to his bony chest was a spotted, stump-tailed bobcat baby, barely breathing. While the stray hissed at anyone who came near, like a father ready to die for a child that wasn't his. Every rule of living beside wildlife told Natalie to leave them alone. But as the sun climbed and the bobcat's cries grew weaker, that starving cat only hugged him tighter, as if he knew the little predator was slipping away. When Natalie finally intervened, it triggered a desperate rescue, a chase through a crowded market, and a grief-stricken cat who refused to give up. What did this street cat know that even the experts didn't? And how far would he go to save his wild baby? Natalie Miller considered her days to be a study in quiet observation. At 72, a widow for 5 years and a retired librarian for 10, her life in the high desert community of Prescott, Arizona, had settled into a predictable, gentle rhythm. Her mornings were for her xeriscate garden, her afternoons for reading, and her evenings for watching the sun paint the granite dells in strokes of apricot and violet. Her small Stockholm home backed onto a stretch of untamed chaparral, a wildland border that brought her both solace and a rotating cast of characters. There were the chatty quail, the brazen rabbits, and, for the past several on and off months, a shadow. He was a stray cat, jet black and all angles, with ribs that showed even through his dusty fur and a weariness that felt absolute. He was a ghost, melting away if she so much as slid her glass door open. Natalie, a precise woman, had taken to calling him Soot in her head. She left a small bowl of dry kibble by the lavender bushes, but she wasn't sure he ever ate it. The javelinas or raccoons probably got it first. On a blisteringly hot Tuesday in July, the rhythm of her morning broke. She was pruning a resilient bougainvillea when she saw him. Set was not in his usual spot, a sliver of shade under the juniper. He was out in the open, near a cluster of prickly pear, and he was not alone. He was curled into a tight, protective crescent. Tucked against his belly was another, smaller creature. At first, Natalie's heart softened. A kitten. Soot was a tomcat, or at least she assumed he was. But perhaps he had a paternal streak. She smiled, reaching for the binoculars she kept by the door for birdwatching. She focused the lens. The smile vanished. The small creature was not a kitten. Not a house kitten. Its fur was a mottled tan and brown, covered in faint, inky spots. Its ears were too large, and even from 50 feet away she could see the tiny, distinctive black tufts at their tips. Its tail was a mere stump. "Oh, dear Lord," she whispered, her hand tightening on the binoculars. It was a bobcat. A baby, and it was crying. It wasn't the strident yowl of a domestic kitten, but a weak, rasping chirp, a sound that barely carried on the dry air. Sut's behavior, which she had mistaken for affection, was something far more desperate. He was not just hugging the kitten, he was guarding it. He licked its head with a rough tongue, nudging it when it shivered, and his own head was on a constant, anxious swivel. A scrub jay that landed too close was met with a ferocious, silent hiss that sent it scattering. Natalie watched, her librarian's patience serving her well as the story unfolded. The bobcat kitten was not just small, it was sickly. Its eyes were gummy and half-closed. Its patchy fur clung to a frame that was nothing but twigs. It was, she realized with a cold dread, deeply dehydrated and starving. Soot, the stray who barely had enough for himself, was trying to mother a dying predator. Natalie's mind, usually so calm, raced. The first rule of the high desert was leave wildlife alone. Its mother was surely nearby. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, the sun climbing higher and beating down on the two small figures, that assumption felt increasingly wrong. The kitten's cries grew weaker, and Soot's ministrations became more frantic. He was fighting a losing battle, a tiny general with a single dying soldier. The kitten, she thought, wouldn't survive the afternoon. "I can't," she whispered to her hummingbird feeder. "I just can't." But she was already moving. She knew the rules, but she also knew the exceptions. This was an exception. She grabbed a thick garden towel, a mesh cat carrier, and, on a desperate hunch, a can of a high-dollar tuna in oil she kept for the occasional casserole. Her approach was slow. Soot saw her coming and went rigid. A low, warning growl rumbled in his chest, a sound far too big for his skeletal frame. "It's okay," Natalie said softly, her voice a low murmur. "It's okay, brave boy. I see you're helping." She was 20 feet away. Soot's green eyes were blazing with a mixture of terror and defiance. The bobcat kitten mewed, a sound so faint it was like a breath. Natalie stopped. She couldn't get near the kitten without going through the cat. "All right," she sighed. "Plan B." She popped the lid on the tuna. The scent, oily, fishy, and overwhelmingly rich, hit the hot air. Soot's growl hitched. His head snapped toward the smell. He was starving. Natalie could see the violent conflict in his body. His duty was to the kitten, but his own survival was screaming at him. She placed the open can on a flat rock, a good 10 feet away from the bobcat. Then she backed up. Soot's gaze flickered. The kitten, the tuna, the woman. He was just a cat after all. He took one hesitant step toward the food, then another. He was a black slash of hunger moving in slow motion. When he finally reached the can and plunged his head in, Natalie moved. She was not as fast as she used to be, but she was deliberate. In 3 long strides, she was at the prickly pear. She scooped up the bobcat kitten with the towel. It was terrifying. The kitten was lighter than a bundle of trying leaves, and its body was terrifyingly hot. It was burning up. A scream ripped through the air. It was not the kitten. It was Soot. He had abandoned the tuna, his eyes wide with betrayal and rage. He launched himself at her, a 30-mile-an-hour streak of fury. He hit her shins, claws extended, but he was so light that it was more of a desperate scramble than an attack. "I'm sorry! I'm sorry!" Natalie cried, fumbling with the carrier latch. She got the kitten inside and slammed the door. She half ran, half stumbled to her car, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sat was right behind her, yowling, swiping at her ankles, a loyal, frantic, heartbroken guardian. She threw the carrier into the passenger seat and jumped into the driver's side, pulling the door shut just as the black cat leaped at the window. She was shaking so hard she could barely put the key in the ignition. She called the first number she could think of. County Animal Control. "Animal Control, this is Mark. I have a bobcat kitten." Natalie panted, her voice high with adrenaline. "It's sick. It's dying. And a stray cat is... He's very upset." "Ma'am, where are you?" Mark's voice was professional, calm. "Are you near the animal?" You should not. I have it. I have it in my car, she said. It's in a carrier. It's dehydrated. It needs help. The stray cat. He was hugging it. There was a pause. Ma'am, a stray cat? Hugging a bobcat? He's chasing my car, she cried. And it was true. As she pulled out of her driveway, Soot was running alongside the blue Subaru, his mouth open in a desperate, silent yowl, his legs pumping as he tried to keep up with the metal beast that had stolen his friend. Oh, you poor, brave, stupid thing, Natalie sobbed, her heart breaking for the second time that day. Mark, sensing the genuine panic, gave her a new directive. Okay, ma'am. Don't come to the shelter. Drive to the public library downtown. I'll meet you there. It's closer. I'll be there in 5. She drove, her eyes flickering between the road and the tiny still form in the carrier. Soot, impossibly, kept pace for 2 blocks before he fell behind, a dwindling black spot in her rearview mirror. Downtown Prescott was bustling. It was Farmers Market Day. Natalie found a parking spot near the library, her hands clammy. She got out, waiting for the AC truck. She was terrified to look in the carrier, terrified the kitten was already gone. She unlatched the door just to check. Still with me, little one? The kitten's eyes were closed. It didn't seem to be breathing. No. A teenager on a skateboard shot past too close, his wheel hitting a pebble. The clatter made Natalie jump. She stumbled back, hitting the car door. The carrier, which she'd left on the seat, tipped. And the Bobcat kitten, which she had thought was comatose, tumbled out. It hit the pavement, and with a final adrenaline-fueled burst of terror, it was gone. It was just a brown and tan streak, vanishing into the forest of legs at the farmer's market. No, Natalie screamed. People turned. What was that? Was that a... Ma'am, are you okay? Natalie's world went into a slow-motion panic. She was scanning the crowd, her eyes darting between shopping bags and strollers. It was gone. She had taken it from its only protector and lost it. And then she saw him. Like a shot, a black missile streaked from an alleyway. It was Soot. He had followed her. He had run or cut through yards for over a mile. He ignored the people, the dogs, the noise. His eyes were locked. He darted past a produce stand, skidded on the pavement, and vanished under a large parked Ford F-150. A moment later, from beneath the truck, came a single, weak chirp. Natalie ran, pushing past a man with a bag of kettle corn. Excuse me. Pardon me. A small crowd gathered. Ma'am, what's wrong? It's under the truck, she panted, dropping to her hands and knees on the hot pavement. And there, in the deep shade of the chassis, was the tiny, trembling, spotted kitten. Curled around it, his back to the world and his body shielding the baby from the massive, terrifying tires, was Soot. He was hissing at the truck's differential, a loyal, immovable guardian returned to his post. He found him, a woman whispered. Just then, the animal control truck pulled up. A man in a khaki uniform, Mark, stepped out and took in the scene. The crowd, the old woman on her knees, and the 2 animals under the truck. Well, he said, pushing his cap back. You were right. He is upset. Natalie, her face streaked with tears and dust, looked up at him. You have to be gentle. Please. The kitten is terrified. And the cat won't leave him. Mark, to his credit, was a good man. He saw the bond. He didn't come out with a catchpole. He got a bowl of water and a small, meat paste-filled syringe. He lay down on his stomach. "Hey there, fellas," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You've had a day. How about we get you out of there?" He slid the water under. They heard lapping. Then he pushed the food syringe. Soot, ever the protector, sniffed it first, then ignored it, hissing. But the Bobcat kitten, smelling actual food, crept forward. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Mark's patient murmuring, of Natalie shooing the crowd back, of Soot growling at any shadow that moved. Finally, the kitten, driven by starvation, crept into the open. Mark gently, he swiftly netted him. The separation was brutal. As the kitten was placed in Mark's secure, climate-controlled carrier, Soot let out a sound of pure, unadulterated grief. He dashed out from under the truck, launching himself at the carrier, but Mark was too quick. He blocked the cat, who skidded to a halt, a picture of desperate confusion. "I'm taking him straight to Dr. Allen's clinic," Mark said to Natalie, his voice tight with emotion. "It's closer than the rehab center. This little guy needs an IV stat." He loaded the Bobcat into his truck. As he pulled away, Natalie was left on the curb with the stray cat. Soot sat on the pavement, trembling, watching the truck disappear. He looked lost, his purpose stolen from him. He had faced down starvation, a mile-long run, and a crowd of humans, all for his baby. And he had failed. He looked up at Natalie. His green eyes were no longer fierce, just empty. Natalie's heart, which she thought had broken its final piece, found one more way to crack. She opened the door to her own car. "He's gone, brave boy," she whispered. "He's gone to the doctor." She reached down, slowly. The cat didn't move. He was too exhausted, too broken. She scooped him up. He was all bone, weighing less than the towel she'd used on the kitten. She put him on the passenger seat. He didn't fight. He just curled into a tight black ball, his face to the door, and trembled. Natalie drove home. The call came 5 hours later. Natalie had spent the afternoon coaxing Soot, now officially Smokey, a name that felt more permanent, out from under her bed. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't drink. He just waited. "Mrs. Miller?" "This is Dr. Allen." Mark from Animal Control brought in that Bobcat kitten. The vet sounded tired. "Natalie, it's bad. It's really bad." "The dehydration?" Natalie asked, her hand twisting the phone cord. "Worse," Dr. Allen said. Her voice dropped. "We ran blood work. He's full of anticoagulant rodenticide, rat poison." Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. The air left her lungs. "Oh my God." "He's bleeding internally," the vet said, her voice thick. "It's why he was so weak. It's why his mother likely abandoned him. She would have known he was a lost cause." Natalie sank into a chair, the tears she'd been holding back all day finally coming. The cat. Smokey. "Mrs. Miller," Dr. Allen said, and Natalie could hear the tears in the vet's own voice. That kitten's body temperature was 94 degrees. He was in the advanced stages of hypothermia, even in this heat. The poison was wrecking his ability to regulate. Dr. Allen took a shaky breath. That stray cat. He wasn't just guarding him, Natalie. He was hugging him to stop the cold. The cat's body heat was the only thing keeping that kitten's heart beating. He knew. Somehow, that magnificent little cat knew his friend was cold, and he was trying to give him all the warmth he had. This was the discovery. This was the moment the world tilted. It wasn't just protection. It was a conscious, desperate act of life-saving. "That cat," Dr. Allen said, her voice breaking, "is the only reason this kitten had a chance. Will he make it?" Natalie whispered. "We've given him a blood transfusion from our clinic cat, and he's on a heavy-duty vitamin K therapy. It's 50-50. But he's a fighter. And Mark told me about the stray. How is he?" Natalie looked at the black, trembling ball under her bed. "He's here. He won't eat. He's just waiting for his friend." The next few days were a vigil. Natalie sat on the floor by her bed, reading a novel aloud, just so Smokey could hear a calm voice. She told him the updates she got from the clinic. "He's holding his own, Smokey," she'd murmur. Dr. Allen said he stood up. "He ate today, brave boy. He ate a little bit of food." On the third day, Smokey crept out from under the bed. He was still thin, but his eyes were clearer. He walked over to Natalie and for the first time pushed his head into her hand. He started to purr, a rusty, halting sound. Then he walked to the bowl of food she'd left out and began to eat. The kitten, now named Bobby by the clinic staff, survived. He was a miracle, but he was also a problem. "Natalie, we have a strange situation," Dr. Allen called to report a week later. "Bobby is physically recovered. The poison is gone, but he's depressed. He's listless. He won't play. He just lies in his cage. He's not responding to the rehabbers. And he's a wild animal. If he doesn't get his spirit back, he won't be a candidate for release." She paused. How's your cat?" Natalie looked at Smokey, who was sitting by the front door staring at it, as he had for 3 days, as if waiting for a small spotted friend to be returned. He's waiting," Natalie said, her heart aching. "This is crazy," Dr. Allen said, "but I've heard of this. At sanctuaries. They're bonded, deeply. They're grieving for each other." That was when Natalie Miller, the quiet librarian, became a woman on a mission. She got on the phone. She called every wildlife sanctuary in Arizona, then in New Mexico and Utah. She explained the whole story. The poison, the hug, the chase, the dual species, life-saving bond. Most politely declined. "We aren't equipped for domestic animals, ma'am." But then she called a renowned center outside of Scottsdale. The director, a woman named Sarah, listened to the entire story without interrupting. "He saved his life," Natalie finished, her voice passionate. "He was hugging him to keep him from freezing. And now they're both just giving up." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "It's highly unusual, Mrs. Miller. But we've seen stranger things. We have a Bobcat rehab program. And if this domestic cat, Smokey, is healthy, neutered, and can pass a health screening, and if his presence helps the Bobcat's rehabilitation, we will take them both." The reunion was staged in a quiet, quarantined enclosure at the sanctuary. Natalie, Dr. Allen, and Sarah were the only ones present. Natalie carried Smokey in a proper carrier. He'd been neutered and vaccinated, and he hated the car. Dr. Allen brought Bobby in his own carrier. He was bigger than Natalie remembered, but he looked dull, his spotted coat lacking luster. They set the 2 carriers 10 feet apart. They opened Smokey's door first. He crept out, low to the ground, sniffing the strange new dirt smell. He looked at the humans, his eyes wary. Then, from the other carrier, came a low, rasping chirp. Smokey froze. He chirped back, a short, questioning sound that Natalie had never heard before. Sarah, moving slowly, unlatched Bobby's carrier. The little bobcat stumbled out. He looked around, confused. He saw Smokey. He let out a cry, and this time it wasn't weak. It was a full-throated, desperate call. He stumbled, ran toward the black cat. Smokey ran toward him. They met in the middle. There was no hesitation. Smokey didn't just sniff. He headbutted the bobcat kitten, then shoved his body against him, curling around him, and began to purr like a chainsaw. He started bathing Bobby's head, licking his tufted ears. And Bobby, for the first time since his rescue, shoved his face into Smokey's black fur, his stumpy tail vibrating, and began to purr back. The three women stood there, tears streaming down their faces, making no sound. "Well," Sarah finally said, wiping her eyes on her sleeve, "I guess that settles that. Welcome home, boys." Natalie became a weekend volunteer at the sanctuary. She made the long drive every Saturday, her car filled with donations. It was her visitation day. She would watch them in their large, natural enclosure, built to help Bobby learn the skills he'd need. As the months turned into a year, Bobby grew. He was no longer a sickly kitten, but a magnificent, healthy young bobcat. He was sleek, powerful, and wild, learning to pounce and climb from the rehabbers. But he was deemed non-releasable. His early trauma and his deep imprinting on his feline savior meant he would never be truly wild. It didn't matter. He had a home. And sunning himself on a high-up rock right next to the bobcat was Smokey. He was no longer skeletal. He was a sleek, handsome black cat, his fur glossy, his green eyes bright. He was, for all intents and purposes, the bobcat's companion, mentor, and, on occasion, his pillow. Visitors to the sanctuary would often stop at the enclosure, baffled. They would see the beautiful wild bobcat, and then, right beside him, a common house cat. They'd watch, mesmerized, as the bobcat would gently groom the black cat's head, and the black cat would, in turn, nudge the bobcat's chin. It was, as Sarah had said, unusual. But to Natalie, who watched them from the shade of a mesquite tree, it was the most logical thing in the world. It wasn't just a cat saving a kitten. It was two lost souls, a shadow and a spot, who had been cold and dying. And in the face of death, they had found each other and chosen to be warm together.